Hey, I'm Pericth or Sevi or Ryan or any other name you may know me under. What the? Who cares? I'm here to talk about PvP and the most important thing about PvP, which is never mentioned when talking about PvP. I've been playing World of Warcraft since vanilla and it took me something like 6 months to level up to 60. I was very casual. I knew nothing about the game, really. Not PvE, not PvP. When TBC launched, I got more active and did some dungeons at max level, but it was not before Season 3 that I started playing Arena. I played Battlegrounds before, but Arena was different somehow. I got hooked. I was interested. I continued playing Arena through Wrath of Lich King, Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria. I was playing Feral, and I started making instructional videos for Ferals back then. I got into the Hall of Fame on Warcraft movies, which sadly is being overshadowed by streaming sites today. I played with all sorts of people, good and bad, from casual to pro, and I enjoyed watching other people play. The game always changed. Every patch, every add-on. And players were complaining about too much burst damage in Wrath of Lich King, too much CC in the game in Mists of Pandaria, about ability pruning in Worlds of Draenor. We're now in Legion, and I haven't really played PvP since the end of Mists of Pandaria. Why not? People always complain, and it's a good thing, when they can voice their discontent so developers can hear them. But they complain about the wrong things. Now it's my turn to complain, and I probably should have done so a long time ago. When you create something where players can play against other players, it's a place for PvP. By definition, it is PvP. You have players interacting with other players. And I agree. But PvP developed into something more. It's not just about the definition. It's about the interaction. Let me talk about that. There's Battlegrounds, Rated Battlegrounds, World PvP, and Arena. All of them are a variant of PvP, but only one of them is the PvP we love and hate, and that's Arena. I want to tell you why I think it's the only thing that should be called PvP. PvP is not just any scenario where you have player versus player interaction. It's a scenario where the interaction is both technical and cognitive. And for that to explain, let me ask you, what does it mean to be a good PvP player? It's an old question, it never gets tired. We can ask the same question in a very different area of life. In wildlife, what makes a predator a good predator? What happens if two good predators have to fight head-on? Well, they make sure to prevent the best move of their opponent. The reason they don't make their best move is because that would get them killed if their opponent anticipates that move. So you have to get smart and prevent best moves and anticipate moves of your opponent. That's what a good predator is. And that's what a good PvP player is. You don't simply press 1, 2, 3 because you know your optimal rotation. We're not in PvE. You have to think about what your opponent might want to do and prevent that from happening. So your optimal move is not the best move against other players. It can be, of course, if they don't expect you to play a certain way. But on high-rated Arena, players all know what you want to do, more or less, and they try to disarm you. They try to surprise you with a new move, one you don't expect. This is what PvP is about. You are cognitively involved in the process of interacting with other players. It is technical because there needs to be an implemented way for players to interact with each other. That's the programming part. And it is cognitive because you are thinking about what your opponent might be thinking, what you think about them. That's PvP. And it's absent from Battlegrounds, Rated Battlegrounds, and World PvP. Do you try to anticipate your BG opponents? No. You just want to get some heals from the newbie resto druid who backpedals. Are you in the head of your opponents in RBG? Hell no. You coordinate CC and damage, and the group to better coordinate their CC and damage wins the round. World PvP? Yeah, I'm getting PvE'd by players with 1 million DPS and I'm dead in 5 seconds. That has nothing to do with PvP. I can sympathize with players who felt and feel that there is an imbalance in the game. Some classes are too strong, some setups are too dominant. I understand that, and that's something that should be balanced. But one thing may never ever disappear from the game due to balancing, and that's theory of mind. It's your attempt at guessing what other players might think and do. It's you trying to anticipate your opponent's move. PvP in World of Warcraft has changed. It's been a fast-paced mind battle in Wrath of the Lich King, where individual players could turn around the entire match just by virtue of being able to anticipate their opponents. The world of PvP centered around individual players who could win every single match against you, not because of an imbalanced system, but because they prevented your best moves and they destroyed you. They owned you. I always loved Feral. It was a difficult class to play sometimes, and at other times it was rather easy. That's true of all classes, I think. It depends on the current class balance in a given patch, but there is something that changed. The game no longer revolves around individual players. Every single add-on, it became more difficult for good players, in my definition, to stay good. Deathing a blind doesn't win the game, even though it's a major accomplishment for the individual player. Sapping a Shadow Melt, so that is someone who uses Shadow Melt to avoid CC or drop target, but he gets sapped because he dropped combat, that's a major accomplishment for the rogue. But you can still lose the game. Individual accomplishments based on theory of mind no longer win games. That's because the game developed into a more strategic battlefield that requires team coordination above all. Doesn't that remind us of something? Abilities have been removed that were vital for theory of mind. Ferals lost Cyclone, they lost Hibernate, which was a simple mechanic, you can put beasts to sleep. But the skill cap of Hibernate was very high. You could pay attention to save your 5 karma points for an immediate Predator Swiftness proc and force druids or shamans into the travel or ghost wolf forms only to hibernate them. Or you could prevent being hibernated yourself by shifting out of your form at the exact same time as it is cast on you, and it's an instant cast. Predicting it meant playing in the mind of your opponent, because it could come at any time. And that's just one example where ability pruning chipped at the heart of PvP. It made PvP less cognitive. It made it more mechanical. On top of that, abilities increasingly became fail-proof. Remember how Vanish used to break instantly in Wrath of the Lich King? That actually needed fixing, but many other things did not. Why do red paladins enter the divine shield just before they die without having to actually press the spell? Why do dots disappear from a target when you CC it with a damage sensitive spell such as Polymorph? Now, I'm not saying it's bad that the things are the way they are. I'm saying the mechanics of the game should be mindful of human error. We have to be able to force people into uncomfortable situations where they use their own judgment of how to react, where they use Divine Shield preemptively, even though they maybe didn't have to. I don't want to play against the game, but against the player. I want a mind with intentions and expectations to be behind the player I interact with. I want to be able to anticipate the best moves of that mind instead of having to play against inbuilt failsafes. What happens when you are forced to play against mechanics rather than intentions? You get strategic. You coordinate with your team. That's the direction the game is going. So, what am I saying? The message is this. The interaction of PvP should be based on mindful mechanisms. Mechanisms that take into account players' need to interact with another mind, rather than having to play against a failsafe mechanic. The interaction of PvP should be balanced around team coordination and theory of mind. Right now, that balance is more towards the coordination side, where individual contributions don't matter. The game needs more fail-sensitive spells. It needs more mechanisms driving these spells which make a mind-to-mind interaction possible and tip the balance more towards the individual skill side. And sorry to rant, but the last patch on September 26 entirely and completely destroyed ferals in PvP. This is not balance. Do you want my thoughts on this one? I bet you do. We all want to know what's on somebody else's mind. And PvP doesn't get to change that.